Welcome to the Social Justice Forums. I'm your host, Kibin Alleyne, covering for Darren Jaime. We thank you for joining us. If you're asking the question, what is this show all about? We bring you a forum discussion providing a deeper understanding of the issues and inequities many communities face. From systemic inequalities to pressing social problems, our guests will provide multiple perspectives and insights to help us better understand and address these challenges. We invite you to stay connected with us as the Social Justice Forum starts now. Welcome back. In New York City, countless children and families face challenges overshadowing even the simplest joys of childhood and parenting. Yet, there is a mission driven organization working tirelessly, ensuring no child feels forgotten and no parent loses hope. Joining us to tell us more is the Executive Director of Projects with Care, Jeff Kozel. Jeff, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Now, can you share a little bit more behind the founding of Projects with Care?
Sure. So we were founded in 1991 as Stockings with Care. That was our first initial program, which is our holiday program. And it was founded by Rosalie Joseph and Tom Fontana. And Rosalie was a casting director, and she went into one of these parties where um, everyone got a gift that was like, let's say, for a 6-year-old, and it wasn't personal. And the kids were happy to receive it, but she felt like we could do something more where it was personalized. So it evolved into Stockings with Care, which offers each of the children that we serve 3 wishes from their wish list for Christmas, and then our Santas go out and purchase those 3 gifts, and they're given back to the parent or guardian for them to be able to celebrate the holiday as a family with dignity, and we're completely anonymous.
Now, what core belief or principle drives the work of Projects with Care?
That every child and family in our community deserves to feel seen and heard, and that they're special and they matter.
Now, you've helped and assisted over 70,000 children, and they've definitely been impacted by your initiatives. Can you describe some of the most memorable stories or moments that have stood out to you?
I recently did a couple of interviews for a video that we did at our fundraiser, and we met with some of the parents. One of the things that really stood out to me is that, and this happens to be in the Bronx, this shelter that we deal with, and she said that we take the pain out of the mother of not being able to provide for their child, and that it was special and that she wanted it to keep going for other families because she had no idea what she was going to do for the holidays and how her kids would feel if they had just lost their father. That she felt she had nothing. She couldn't do a tree, a decoration, a gift, nothing. And that this really saved her as a family to feel like the kids still had something.
That,
So,
yeah, that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I kind of even want to expand more on your efforts to ensure that you're, reaching as many families as possible. I understand that you collaborate with NYC social service agencies. Can you tell me a little bit more about that effort?
sure. So, we make sure that we want to make sure that we know that who our donors are donating to, that we know where it's going. Years ago, we've been working with Scan Harbor in the Bronx for 22 years, I think it is. So we've got long-term relationships with all of our agencies. This year, we have taken on the domestic violence shelters as well. As we're expanding, we're trying to do more for the residential shelters. And those kids are some of the neediest in the system because they leave in the middle of the night with nothing. And they literally have just the clothes on their backs. So we try to help those parents and families as they, navigate the back to school, the holiday, and then of course our new program, Project Welcome Home.
Now, I definitely want to continue talking a little bit more about, just this holiday tradition. It's been happening for 33 years, which is truly amazing. What has been
Yes,
the key to sustaining and growing this tradition?
I think it is how the Santas feel connected to the children. It's not random. You get the child's wish list, you understand their name, their age, their color, what they're asking for, And it makes it very special because you know that this is the only holiday these children are having, and that you, as a neighbor, can do something for these people who are living in our community. So I think that's part of what sustains it. We have people return year after year. They go, they do it. They're a Santa one time. Now they bring their company in, and so it's very exciting. The growth has been really exciting in the last couple of years.
Now, I understand that you mentioned that it is not random. So, with that, what steps are taken to make sure that a child's specific holiday wishes are fulfilled?
So we start in September, back to school time, and the through the agencies we work with, then the social workers get in touch with the families who get in touch with the children. They fill out their three wishes. It comes back to us. It gets a little bit cleaned up to make sure no one's asking for a violent game or something like that. We try to keep it into perspective, cost wise. Also, you can't get a Mercedes if you're 16. Um, and then every child that wants a bike, we believe that that represents freedom and independence. So we purchase the bikes for them because they're too hard to order in the city and get them and transport them. So we have a whole team of people who build bikes that we purchase for every child that gets a bike, and that is their only gift. They get a bike, a helmet, and a lock. Um, but those we then have all of our Santa sign up. It's happening today as we speak, or the last of them for this year. They are assigned a child randomly, and so that's the child that they get. And sometimes it's one or two, or sometimes there's some requests where people will say, "Oh, I have a 9-year-old and a 10-year-old. I'd like children that age so that we can shop together and make it a family thing." Um, but it's really just making sure that this child, what they're asking for is what ends up getting back to them. So when we have a whole donated space, 24,000 square feet, we have hundreds of volunteers that come, and we make sure that everything is there. Every child that we say we're covering gets everything that they've asked for. And we make sure that with the siblings, that everything is equal, because no parent wants to say, "Oh, this kid got 8 presents and this one only got 2." So we there's a whole system in place of how this all works. Then they go back through to the agency, and then the social worker, and then to the family. And we're completely anonymous in all of this.
Now, I understand you briefly mentioned 16, so I'm curious to know what are the ages that, if somebody wants to make a difference, what are the age group for the children involved?
So we handle from newborn through 18 years old and still in school. So once they're out of school, they kind of leave what we do, even if they're still part of the family, unfortunately. Um, but we're school age kids and below.
Now, why is it important for children to feel like they belong, especially in terms of having, maybe that present that they've been thinking about all year, and even expanding to beyond just the holidays, but for school clothing? Why is it important that they feel that they belong when they have these things?
You know, so many of the children that we serve are already in such a feeling like they're less than when they're going to school, right? Let's say, let me take a teenager, for example. You'll see so many of the wishes say, "I want a Nike this or an Adidas that." And it's not that they're looking for that particular or a particular item. They want to belong. They want to feel that sense of community with their friends, their colleagues at school, the students. They don't want to be looked down upon. And you see that a lot through the list and through the communication with the agencies. It's and for the little ones, so often because of the situation they're in financially and their families are in, they may want a lot of things, as all kids do, but they don't necessarily get them. We only provide new items. So if a kid says, even if it's something simple like Legos, he doesn't have to share them. They're the ones they want, and they're theirs. And there's that sense of, I matter to somebody, right? The little children thinks it's Santa Claus. The older children think that, mom and dad or grandma, whoever is the guardian, pulled a miracle out of their hat. So it's important.
Now, I love that you mentioned that small children believe, Santa Claus gave this to them. And then even for the older children, they may think that, their mom and dad did it. Why is it so important to kind of also let children be kids and believe that Santa Claus thought of them, on that special day, or that their mom and dad, however it happened, they were able to get them something for Christmas?
Well, I think that's important to all of us. It was as I was a kid, you felt like if you wished for something and Santa brought it or your parents gave it to you or whatever, you feel like you belong in this larger society also. Remember, Christmas morning, everybody's opening presents, right? All over the world. For you to not have makes you feel less than human almost. You're not participating in the social norm that everybody is doing. And the fact that they're getting what they're asking for and that Santa, let's say, remembered them, as a kid, it's hope, it's joy, it's sharing, it's family. And these kids deserve that as much as any other child.
Now, I want to take a moment to discuss Project Welcome Home. I understand you briefly mentioned it previously. Can you tell us a little bit more about that initiative?
Yes, that started as a conversation with some of our domestic violence shelters that we adopted for our back to school program. And we just launched it last month. And it is an opportunity. So, projects with care cannot create, we don't do housing, we don't do long-term education, we do moments, right? Because that's what we can do, and we'd like to do as many as possible. And we found out that the people leaving the domestic violence shelter and going into supportive housing, whether it's in a project or through a voucher or whatever, they don't have anything. They leave the shelter with what they came in with, which is basically the clothes on their back. So we heard the story of a mother who had 3 children, and she was moving into an apartment, which she was thrilled about, and the kids were safe, and she was safe from their abuser. But the children had to sleep on the floor in rolled up clothes because they didn't have anything else. And it re-traumatized the whole family again because she had taken them out of their beds, out of their life that they had, even though it was not good and not safe. But as a parent, you want your child to feel protected and to feel cared for. And we decided that we would create that moment of that first night when they get into their apartment. So we provide beds for every member of the family, bedding, personalized if we can. So we find out what if the little kid likes red and he likes dinosaurs or whatever, and our good neighbors who are our volunteers that we call our Santas for the holiday program. They sponsored this family and they purchased those personalized items as well as everything they need for the bathroom, for the kitchen, so they can have their first time at home where they can take a shower, give the kid a bath, um, do the dishes, cook a meal, and tuck their children into bed. And they have that they are safe and that they've got a home.
Now, what I love is that through this work, you're really thinking about what people want. And I think sometimes in, work that deals with giving back, people think, oh, you should just be grateful that you have bed sheets. But you're like, no, like if this child wants bed sheets with dinosaurs on it, they should be able to have that. And I love that it takes into account those little things that people like that kind of put a smile on their face. And I think that's something that should definitely be introduced more into this type of work. That like it's okay for people to say, yeah, I may need bed sheets, but I want this brand or not brand, but I want dinosaur bed sheets. I think that's amazing. I love to hear that's
So
what you're pushing.
it's not as specific as like saying that the bed sheets will be that, but they
Right.
give us some insight, right? So our good neighbors know that this is a child that they're going to care for.
Hmm.
And these are wonderful people in our network. And they want to do and make that kid happy and know that they're creating this home. So it's a little bit extra because it's personal, but that's what Projects with Care does. We make sure that these kids and their parents, even the last family that moved, the mother liked purple. So the sponsor got her, purple sheets and a purple bathrobe, and just so that she could feel good in her new home, also. Because if mom ain't happy, ain't nobody happy, right? So
Right.
everybody wants children are reflecting how their parents feel about this as well. So you try to create that moment.
Definitely. Now, what role do community partnerships play in the success of your initiatives, and how do you foster these relationships?
So if we're talking community partnerships, meaning the agencies that we work with and the location that they're in, we spend time really talking to them and finding out what they need. As we were trying to introduce a new program, we've been all volunteer until last year. I became their first executive director in May of 2023. And with my colleague Brendan, our program manager, we have been trying to figure out how do we do that next program. And we really went and said, what do you need? What can we do that's not being done that is something that we can in fact handle, because we're still very small. So the partnerships in that respect are very important, as are our partnerships with some of our corporate sponsors, because we're trying to put the people that want to do good and the people who need us together, with the synergy of what we do. And we're more like the facilitator, if that makes sense.
Now, with the entire organization starting back in the early 90s and with the pilot of Project Welcome Home starting in 2024, what are your goals for the future of this program?
To be honest with you, I just talked about this at our annual fundraiser in my speech. So we're doing 25% more kids than ever, right, this year. So we're doing 2,500 children for Christmas. But there's 46,000 sleeping in shelter tonight. And I look at it and say, how do I get to 5,000, to 10,000, to all of them? I think the programs that we have are solid, they're scalable, and there's a need out there. What I would like to do in my dream world would be to cover every kid in shelter.
Now, I also want to take a moment to discuss, just people who are listening to this and they feel like they want to help, they want to be good neighbors and they want to make a difference in a family's life. Where can they go to learn more information, and what are some qualities they should have?
So they can always go to our website, projectswithcare.org. We have what's called our projects page, and it tells you about each of our programs and how to get involved in them, and also some special projects that we've done through the years. All you need to do to get involved is care. Some people have money, and we need that. Some people want to physically volunteer, and we need that. And some people want to advise and make introductions, and it's everything. So as long as you care about your neighbors and your community, we need you.
Well, Jeff, thank you so much for joining us and sharing this initiative with our community.
Thank you very much for having me.
We have to take a quick break. We'll be back right after this.
We're going to start the show right now. This is my favorite part. Ready in 5, 4, 3, 2. Hey, this is Angel, and I am one of the instructors for the in-studio production. Here at BronxNet, we offer classes that can help you elevate, expand, and start your television career. All you have to do is sign up at BronxNet.org/education. For the past 7 years, I have been in various productions, spanning from talk shows, independent films, news reports, art displays, teachings, musical performances, and many more. Ain't that right, Angel? Yeah, you're absolutely right, Angel. There are a lot of creative individuals that we're just waiting to sign up for the class. And if I may, can I also express that? Thank you, Angel. That's all the time we have left. Visit BronxNet.org/education and become a producer by taking the course. The class I offer is also in English, en español y también bilingüe. Nos vemos en la próxima clase.
Welcome back. Black Women on Board is a compelling book exploring the impactful leadership of black women educators within predominantly white colleges and universities in the United States. Our next guest shares a remarkable story of Dr. Claudia H. Hampton, who was the first black woman trustee in the California State University system and later became its first woman chair. Here now is the Associate Dean of Personnel and Curriculum and Professor of History in the College of Liberal Arts at California State University Long Beach, Dr. Donna J. Nickel. Doctor, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, can you tell us a little bit more about your book, Black Woman on Board, and how it highlights Dr. Claudia H. Hampton? What inspired you to delve into her story?
Well, I was inspired to delve into her story first because I discovered a picture of her and I didn't know who she was. And I was just amazed to see this Black woman in a digital archive with very little information about her. So I knew her name, I looked her up and saw that she was a CSU trustee. But more importantly, she was appointed by Ronald Reagan, which struck me as odd because Ronald Reagan uh, pretty much could not stand the civil rights movement, Black people. He had a known history for speaking out against, the civil rights movement. And so I was very struck by this Black woman being appointed by this particular governor. And then as I started to get into the archives, I realized that it was more than just her being the first. She was the most probably prolific, effective, and significant trustee the board has ever had. She's the second longest serving. She served for over 20 years on the board, and she was instrumental in the implementation of affirmative action. Now, while affirmative action policy had been approved, there was very little movement in terms of implementation and enforcement until Claudia Hampton came on board. And she knew that she was the affirmative action trustee. That's how she referred to herself. And so she took on the mantle of carrying forward affirmative action to make sure that Black students and Latinx students and women had an opportunity to get a college education.
Now, in your research, you discussed Dr. Hampton's use of sly civility to advance affirmative action policies amidst resistance. Can you elaborate on what this strategy entailed and how it resonates with current challenges in educational equity?
Yeah, absolutely. So sly civility is a resistance strategy that was first coined by cultural theorist Homi Bhabha. And what he does in his book called Location of Cultures is he talks about the ways in which people who have been colonized, particularly in the case of India, people who have been colonized in their own land, um, were expected to um, adhere to white British cultural norms and values and kind of lose themselves in the process. But he further elaborates on this idea called sly civility, where the colonized enters into predominantly white spaces and they behave civilly toward the colonizer while slyly passing resources on to those other colonized people. And so Hampton talked about. I found an audio of her, a 6 hour interview that I transcribed when I first started this research, and she described this need to be a pragmatic board on a pragmatic boardsman, and she talked elaborated about how she would trade votes with these white men in order to get her ultimate goal. So let me give you an example. There was a very powerful trustee before her. His name was Charles Luckman. And Luckman had a lot of influence on the board because he designed Madison Square Garden. He was an architect, and he had a lot of prestige, and people looked up to him. And so Claudia Hampton knew she had to trade votes with Luckman in order to get the person she wanted as president of Cal State Dominguez Hills, which was the predominantly Black um, CSU campus. And so she talked about, I traded votes with him. You know, if he wanted uh, an art installation to be 6 feet as opposed to 10 feet, okay, I would trade votes with him in order to get the vote for the person she wanted at Dominguez Hills. But Sly Civility, she went even further than that because she knew she was locked out of a lot of the backdoor deals. They called it the telephone network. She was locked out of that because she was a black woman, and she was just like, okay, I have to figure out a way to get access to this informal network. Otherwise, I won't be able to move my affirmative action agenda forward. And so she started cooking dinner for these white male trustees and campus presidents and built informal networks with them. She talked about in interviews, she would go have beers with them. She'd smoke a cigarette with them during breaks. She sent Christmas cards to people and to their families. She got to know the names of their wives and their children. There was this elaborate type of um, social networking on a personal level in order to disarm their racism. So she says she basically played to the gender norm of the day by being a hostess in order for them to not um, demonize her or exclude her because she was black. Whereas the white women on the board had much harder time getting things through because they believed the righteousness of their cause was was the only thing that was important. Hampton knew she had to be very strategic. And so sly civility is the method that she used in order to make sure that there would be funding for affirmative action.
Thank you so much for sharing that history because, as you mentioned, even in your own journey, like not a lot of people know about this. But, she has such an impact on education, which kind of leads me to my next point. Your work emphasizes the pivotal role of Black women as educational leaders. Could you share some examples beyond Dr. Hampton that illustrate the broader impact and significance of Black women in higher education?
Yeah, so in fact, one of the women who helped Dr. Hampton get to the Board of Trustees is a woman named Verna Canson, and she was the West Coast Regional Director of the NAACP. She was not an educator, but she knew that Black kids needed educational opportunities in order to have social mobility. And so she was instrumental in designing the Scholastic Olympics program through the NAACP. And so Black kids would train and compete for Scholastic Olympics, like a decathlon type of event, but around academics. And the winners would get full scholarships to the college and universities of their choice. Um, there was also a woman named Eva Patterson. She was not an educator, also, but she was a lawyer who uh, helped to fight against the attacks on affirmative action that came in the 1990s. And so she filed lawsuits and injunctions against several school districts. So Black women have been playing these pivotal roles, whether in the institution or outside the institutions, because they know how important those opportunities for Black kids and youth are.
Now, as a scholar focusing on African American educational history, what are some key historical milestones or trends that have shaped the landscape of educational access for marginalized communities in the United States?
Yeah, so I think some of the most important milestones, obviously, we talk about the Brown versus Board of Education decision as being pivotal, but we always kind of mislinking the Brown decision to the Little Rock Nine in 1957, which were the nine African American kids who wanted to help make sure that the Brown decision was enforced. So we kind of sometimes we talk about the lawsuit, but we kind of miss that there was activism happening after the lawsuit happened in order to make sure that this country would live up to its promise of integrated schooling. So that's one pivotal moment. Another pivotal moment is in 1972 when affirmative action was an executive order in 1965, but it did not get enforced until 1972. And that's when a number of feminist groups came together and started to press the government for enforcement rules on affirmative action. And until that happened, basically these programs languished. And so you had a lot of behind the scenes activism of women and people of color to make sure that everyone had full access to these institutions. I would say another important milestone would also be, uh, I mean, we can go back further to milestones. Even if you look at wider milestones, so things like the, I'm losing
No,
it.
well, it's okay. I think it kind of just shows the fact that there's so many moments that kind of led us to where we are now. And I think that's so important to highlight. And I also want to, kind of talk about the fact that although now we are able to kind of reap the benefits of all the hard work that so many before us have, done to get us where we are, it was not without hardship. Can you just, highlight some of the challenges a lot of Black people, specifically Black women, had to face? And, how are we seeing these challenges kind of show up in the world of academia and education today?
Oh, absolutely. So I'll just give you an example from the book, because the first year that Claudia Hampton was there on the board, she didn't speak because she was trying to learn, figure things out. But when she did speak on affirmative action in her second year, one of the trustees blurted out, and I'm forewarning you, that he said, "Oh my God, there's a nigger in the woodpile." And everyone automatically turned to her and expected her to respond angrily. But because she had worked to help desegregate LA Unified School District in the K-12 level, that was her job. Previous to becoming a trustee, she knew she couldn't respond to him immediately in that moment. So she had to pull him to the side and let him know that his behavior was inappropriate. And she also enlisted the other white men on the board to go after this guy for using this kind of language against her. So that's just one example of, you know, what Black women were experiencing when they entered into these predominantly white spaces. There's so many examples of where Black women have been presumed to be incompetent, or castigated as being angry and hostile, where our language is too abrasive. The colors we wear are too loud. Our hair is too natural and kinky and coily. Just how we present ourselves in these spaces disrupts this kind of status quo, and people are very angry when we show up, particularly when we show up as uh, folks who have the same level of education and credentials and can speak about these issues. And if you want to link this to today, we see instances where Black women are being bullied in universities. We had the recent passing of Dr. Bailey at Lincoln University in Missouri, the kind of microaggressions that appear not only as for faculty but also for Black students. I work in the California State University system, and at one point we had a significantly larger Black student population. After affirmative action was um, eliminated in the state, that population went from 8% Black down to 4% and dropping. And so Black students don't have the same level of communities of support that they used to have.
Now, I understand that you were part of a documentary titled "The Big Picture: A Race for America." What key insights did you share in the documentary, and how do you see media platforms contributing to broader discussions about race and education in this country?
Yeah, so the big picture documentary looked at philanthropy and how philanthropy shapes race relations in this country. And you can go all the way back to the creation of historically Black colleges and look at how um, philanthropists, usually the big capitalists like Andrew Carnegie um, and John D. Rockefeller poured money into the creation of some historically Black colleges with the idea of keeping Black people in the South, keeping them in the cotton industry, and keeping them subservient to white people. And so this is how you get what is called the General Education Board, which basically ordered higher education throughout the United States. The government did not develop, US government did not develop a Department of Education until the 20th century. So prior to that, they depended on these capitalists to fund these public institutions, some private as well. So if you jump forward, in the documentary, I specifically do my research on conservative philanthropy that had been used to get rid of Black studies programs, to get rid of women's studies programs, to get rid of affirmative action. And so the last chapter of this current book, Black Women on Board, actually overlaps with the conservative philanthropy research because it was the creation of conservative media that helped to kind of catapult this anti-affirmative action fervor. So we have the culture wars of the 1990s and the creation of the racial dog whistle, where you associate welfare queen with a Black woman, even though there are more white women who actually receive welfare benefits. And so media can unfortunately propagate these type of negative images. And there is this idea called the media loop, where, and these are funded media loops where conservative foundations will write a white paper and then they will put it into a newspaper through the AP. They will clip that segment, send it to a congressperson and say, look, everyone is against affirmative action, even though no one actually cared about affirmative action until that moment. Wow. And then it will keep getting recirculated over and over and over again. And so those are some of the things that we discussed in the documentary, along with how philanthropy impacts healthcare outcomes, our political system. We never really focus in on the money behind the kind of media.
Well, Doctor, I want to thank you so much for joining us. Could you very quickly, because we're at the end of our segment, let people know where they can find the book?
Yes, so you can actually go directly to my website, which is www.donnajnickel.com. And if you go under the research tab, the links to purchase the book through either Amazon or through the press directly are on my website.
All right. Well, Doctor, once again, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
We'll be right back after this. Only 57% of New York City high school students are college ready by their senior year. .5% of high school graduates either have no plans to attend college or are uncertain that they will ever attend. .34% of young adults don't go to college because they can't afford it. Discover what's possible. BronxNet's education programs, internships, and opportunities help engage and inspire Bronx youth and beyond to pursue their passions. Be a part of the BronxNet family. Whether you're interested in our shows, joining a class, or donating to support our mission, visit BronxNet.org to learn more.
What's up, creative family? Discover your voice with BronxNet Community Media classes. Are you ready to bring your ideas to life? At BronxNet, we offer television production classes for community members ages 18 and over, empowering you to share your vision with the world. Get certified in field production, in-studio production, and our new exciting addition, podcast production. Once certified, you can create your own show to air on one of our 6 TV channels. It all starts with our free Unleash Your Ideas Masterclass, designed to help you plan your show idea and set you up for success on your production journey. This class is offered at the beginning of each month for your convenience. Our dedicated BronxNet team is here to support, encourage, and uplift you every step of the way. Join us and become a part of the creative force that engages and inspires the Bronx community and beyond. Sign up today and start your media journey with BronxNet. Visit bronxnet.org/education to learn more and register. Let's create something amazing together.
Welcome back. Middle school can be a pivotal time in a young person's life filled with challenges and opportunities shaping their future. Addressing this critical period requires innovative solutions going beyond traditional approaches to mentoring. One program is doing just that, combining clinical expertise, intensive support, and holistic focus on academic, social, and emotional growth. Joining us is the Executive Director and co-founder of the Arthur Project, Jessica Greenawalt. Jessica, thank you for joining me. Now, what inspired the creation of the Arthur Project, and how did this vision come to life?
Oh, that's such a great question. Our program is really inspired by the real life experience of one of our other co-founders, Elizabeth Murray. Some people know her as the Homeless to Harvard author, or as the author of Breaking Night, the story really of her childhood growing up in the Bronx. So Liz, when she was growing up, was cared for by 2 really loving, warm parents who also were dealing with some pretty serious issues around mental health and substance use. And so Liz really didn't get the care that she needed as a child and ended up sort of dealing with a lot of challenges because of that, was in and out of foster care, spent some time being homeless, ultimately kind of shifted the trajectory for herself in returning to high school and ultimately going to Harvard and starting a family and, having a really wonderful life. But she really attributes a lot of that kind of shift in trajectory to a relationship that she had with a neighbor at the time named Arthur. And Arthur would really kind of pay attention to what was going on for Liz and her sister and sort of see what was going on in their home and their life and find ways to safely engage with them, to say, come over to Liz and say, hey, I need help hanging up pictures in my living room, or why don't we head to Van Cortlandt Park and shoot a bow and arrow or something, and did so in a really warm, non-judgmental way that just, over time let Liz know that she was important and that her safety mattered and, being cared for mattered. And over the course of her relationship with Arthur and through other mentors in her life, she really grew this expectation of herself, realizing that she did matter. She wasn't kind of invisible out in the world. In fact, she had a lot of power. And she attributes a lot of that, thinking to the mentors that she had. So when she met another one of our co-founders, Jeff Muty, who was so inspired by her story and said, let's start a mentoring organization that replicates this experience that you had with Arthur and with other really important mentors in your life. And before I even came on board, Jeff and Liz spent a lot of time researching, how to create a mentoring organization that was going to be impactful and supportive and deeply therapeutic, and also avoid a lot of the pitfalls that many other mentoring organizations face. And it was sort of the end of that research phase that they met me, and together we sort of made the Arthur Project a reality.
Now, I understand there's a focus on middle school students. What makes this age group critical for mentoring?
There's a few things, during the middle school years, there's a lot of really interesting stuff happening for young people, both psychologically, socially, cognitively, neurologically. So young people's brains are really developing at a rapid rate during the middle school years. And it's a really exciting time. Developmentally, they're thinking about big picture questions, who are they? What do they believe in? where do they want to go? How do they identify? What is the world around them in terms of how it accepts them or doesn't? They're shaping so many um, ideas about themselves and their future at that time. So that time makes it a really impactful time to get into their lives and to be part of kind of the constellation of supports around them as they navigate all of that. The trials and tribulations of middle school are really no joke for anybody, even under the best of circumstances. But to be able to engage with young people and support them at a time when they're so malleable and their brains are still developing, their sense of self is still developing, it's really a gift to be able to support young people at that time.
Now, can you elaborate on the therapeutic mentoring model and how it differs from traditional mentoring approaches?
Sure. We over time understood ourselves to be a therapeutic mentoring model that does differ from kind of a traditional mentoring model. And what that means for us is that we utilize social work students. So, in most cases, our therapeutic mentors are students of social work, graduate students of social work, the majority of them at the New York City schools of social work. And so they are joining us as therapeutic mentors to take a more holistic, a more clinical and therapeutic approach to mentoring, a more intensive approach, but also an approach that is rooted in social justice and in an anti-oppressive approach, an approach that recognizes that challenges that young people face, even mental health challenges, even diagnoses, mental health disorder diagnoses, that is often a reflection of what's going on in the environment. And when people experience things like persistent discrimination, systematically or personally, or the combination of both, that a very rational response to that is mental health challenges that often look like depression or anxiety or PTSD. And so we're really taking this approach that is more intensive, it is more intentional, it is more therapeutic, and it's also rooted in principles of social justice.
Now, how does the program balance the focus of academic, social, emotional wellness, and mental health in the way that supports the student?
We really see all of those things as being integrated. I mean, a student can't be successful in school if their social emotional needs are not met. A student can't really, get their social emotional needs met if their mental health needs aren't met. Like these things are all connected, they're all interrelated for all of us. And so we see the opportunity to address the full kind of constellation of needs for our young people. And I say needs from a place of first, understanding that our young people are incredibly bright, resourceful, resilient, incredible. I mean, even with all of the challenges that we are facing and that we see all around us right now, the ability for our young people to kind of roll with it and keep moving and keep growing, it's really quite beautiful and inspiring. And they have so many gifts and so many strengths, so many things to claim as their own, kind of in their own toolbox of strengths. And so, even when we are talking about sort of the full scope of needs, we are talking about it from a place of being strengths based and recognizing we have a lot of tools to work with when we are trying to tackle some of these issues that we do see as interrelated: academic engagement, social emotional wellness, and mental health.
Now, what are some specific goals mentees set during their individual mentoring sessions, and how are those goals tracked?
So the goals are really individualized. Each of our mentees follows an individualized growth plan, which they co-create with their mentor. And those plans outline their individualized goals. We have a framework that we use to support goal setting. So we kind of, again, take this holistic view of a child's life and we look at 5 different areas: school and career, finance, family, friends, and relationships, health and wellness, and community and culture. And we use that kind of multidimensional framework to support our young people in thinking about what's important to them. What areas of their life do they see opportunities for growth, for exploration, for healing, and how can we help them get there? And that is really the big question that we ask when we're setting goals with young people or when they're setting goals with us: is what's important to them? Where do they want to go? and how can we help them get where they want to go. So the goals are very much individualized and can fall under any of those categories, and can be anything from improving sleep hygiene. A lot of our young people struggle to get enough sleep, which is so critical during those middle school years. I mean, our kids probably need, still 10, if not more, hours of sleep at night. And between just the demands of life, plus technology and social media and all the other attractive stuff that's out there to young people, it can be really difficult to get enough sleep. And that interferes with all the things we're talking about with school, with mental health, with social emotional wellness. So a goal might be to improve sleep hygiene, to figure out really concrete ways to get more sleep, to come to school on time more often. And it just goes from there. That's just one example.
Now, can you tell me a little bit more about Saturday activities and how they align with mentees' personal goals and skill development?
So on Saturdays, we curate kind of a selection of activities for the young people and mentors to experience, either locally to the borough that they're in, like the Bronx, or further out in the city or outside of the city. And really, the idea behind the creation of that programming is to support the individual skill building that they have set out to do. So to support that goal, the goals that they've been setting with their mentors, to work toward achieving the skills that they have identified are important to them that they want to achieve. So whether that be, pro-social behaviors with their peers, or asking for help, self-advocacy, communicating with others, regulating emotion. There's a lot of stuff that our young people are working on, a lot of stuff we're all working on that can really be practiced out in the world. And even better when you have the opportunity to practice kind of under the with in the context of a safe relationship with a trusted adult, like a therapeutic mentor. So Saturdays are really meant to give our kids an opportunity to further develop those skills in a safe way, to develop other essential life skills, like just navigating around the city. What do you do if you lose your now Omni pass? How do you read a map? All that good stuff. And also to give the young people access maybe to things they wouldn't otherwise be able to access. So different venues and activities that might be financially out of reach for them and their families, or are difficult to get to because of the commute or time. But we want to increase their access to the city that they belong in and love, and should feel just as entitled to tap into as anybody else.
Now, what role do community partnerships play in expanding opportunities for mentees?
Community partnerships play a number of roles for us. I mean, the thing that's coming to mind for me first are the partnerships that we established during COVID, where schools were closed, and the space that we were using to deliver in-person services was unavailable. We found a great community partner, the Bronx Collab Space, who was local to our school partners, who we established a long-term partnership with to make sure that we could have some space for very small, socially distanced in-person activities that for some kids were still so critically important even during the COVID years. And that's just one example. And then, we are working to kind of extend our pipeline with partners in both ways. So we work only with middle school students. And we get a lot of interest and questions about like continuing programming like ours in high school. And really, what we'd like to do is establish more community partnerships with the CBOs that are serving high school students, so that we can really support our young people as they transition into high school and beyond, and support them in making intentional decisions about their academic trajectory that are going to serve them. So if they know that they benefited from having a mentor in middle school, how can they really be then a mentor magnet and go to high school and find other adults that are going to support them in the same ways or in different ways than their mentors did in middle school. And so we're really starting to build out that sort of pipeline of partnering with both elementary schools and in particular high schools, so that we can sort of offer the full range of opportunities to kids as they grow in New York City.
Now, how do you incorporate feedback from mentees and their families into improving the program?
So feedback is really important to us. One of our values is actually collective wisdom. And to us, that means, everybody is every single person is a wealth of knowledge, especially about themselves and their own lives. And together, we just have an incredibly rich amount of information and ideas. And so we're constantly soliciting feedback, really from everybody in our community, from kids, their parents and caregivers, school teachers and staff, our mentors, our staff, our board of directors. We're really in constant conversation and constant iteration as to what we're doing and where we want to go. It's really important to all of us that we're doing something that works for the community that we're serving. And if it's not, then we need to understand why, what that is, and make those adaptations so we can be more responsive. So that feedback process, that feedback loop looks like a lot of different things, surveys, focus groups, conversations, office hours, town halls, invitations to participate in decision making in our organization, invitations to participate in strategic planning in our organization. Even the process of articulating our values took probably 18 months, I would say, because we involved every single stakeholder in our organization. Everybody was involved in shaping and ultimately articulating what's most important to us. So feedback is a big part of who we are.
Well, Jessica, I want to thank you so much for joining us. Can you quickly let everybody know where they can go for more information?
Yeah, so the easiest place to find more information about us is at our website, thearthurproject.org. You can really find out all of the great stuff about everything that we're doing in our school partnerships and out in the community. And I'm always available as well to chat more with anybody who wants to learn more about us.
All right, Jessica, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
We've come to the end of our show today. We hope you enjoyed this week's discussion on the social justice forums. To rewatch this week's edition, you can catch the Recable cast right here on BronxNet.org. If you want to join the conversation and present your point of view, you can visit our social media at BronxNet TV. Join us next week as we continue to elevate the discussion and bring further awareness across the globe. I'm your host, Kibin. Take care.